The infamous MT82 transmission. So when these 2011 models, this one's a 13 obviously, but when the 2011 model came out with the 5.0 and MT82 combination, from day one, guys have had complaints about those, shifting issues, getting locked out of gear, several different gears, third, fourth, fifth. I've been locked out of all three of those on this particular car. Clutch pedals sticking to the floor, just all kinds of issues. And, you know, for over a decade now, guys have been talking about, you know, what is the cure for this problem? How do you fix this? How do you make the transmission shift the way that it should? Is there a silver bullet that's just a consistent fix for this problem? And there's been all kinds of ideas kind of thrown out there, you know. But the more that I've researched it and the more that I've driven this car, I kind of think that the truth of the matter is there's not one specific thing that fixes that problem. I think it's a combination of factors. You know, you can tell that Ford spent all of their budget developing this Coyote engine. And that's probably the reason why they cheaped out on the other stuff like the driveline, you know, because the clutch that came in this car from the factory is junk. I got to see the pressure plate when the shop took it out with 100,000 miles on it. The way that it's set up, the way the shifter is set up and mounted inside the car, and you know, underneath the tunnel there is just ridiculous. They've actually got some like foam material with a plastic zip tie on it from the factory. It's kind of hilarious, actually. But yeah, and then, you know, the synchros and the shift stops and all that stuff inside the transmission. I mean, you could just tell that this is not a transmission setup that they spent a lot of time on. They weren't looking to make something that's robust and will really hold up to, you know, performance-oriented drivers. And it's kind of a shame. But anyway, I think there's like this systematic approach that you have to take if you really want to cure it. You know, you can put an MGW shifter in here and it'll fix a lot of it and make it a little better, but it won't completely cure it. You know, you can put a new clutch in and it'll fix some of the issues, but it won't completely cure it. So what I decided to do on this one is just throw everything at it at once and just get it done the right way. So, you know, brand new heavy duty clutch, MGW shifter, and have the transmission rebuilt by a professional who knows what they're doing and can upgrade it and put some good parts in it. Decided to do all three of those at once because I didn't want to deal with this anymore. The transmission was holding this car back. It was keeping the car from being fun to drive. That's the whole point of a Mustang, is to be able to drive it and have fun, right? We want to be able to bang through the gears. We want to be able to run the RPMs up. We want to have fun with the car, and the transmission was really holding this car back. And it just wasn't worth having. If I can't shift the car the way that I want to, especially when you're at the track or whatever, you know, it's just not worth having the car. So I decided that I was either going to sell the car or I'm going to fix it the right way and make it drive the way it's supposed to. And I decided to go ahead and fix it because I do like the car otherwise. It handles great. The brakes are good. You know, it's just a real fun car otherwise. Just got to get that transmission issue taken care of. So that's what I decided to do on this one, is just go through the whole gamut and just throw everything at it and get it fixed. And I'm happy to report that it did work out great. So check it out. The clutches here, decided to go with an Exedy. This is the Mach 500 Stage 1. So we got a nice streetable clutch here with a more robust heavy duty pressure plate. It's even got a bearing in there. Obviously you get alignment tool and all that with it, but this clutch has really good reviews online. It holds a good amount of power, but it's also organic, so it's going to be very streetable. From what they say, just a little bit more pedal effort, so it should be a really good clutch for my use. Okay, so I showed you guys the clutch. Let's see what's in this box. Packing sheet to make sure everything is in there. Ah, look at there. Wow. That's awesome. That's a thing of beauty right there. MGW shifter. Check that out. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up real well. It feels like really finely crafted piece of machinery, which makes sense because it is a really finely crafted piece of machinery. That is going to make the car shift really, really well. So we got the Exedy Stage 1 clutch. Now we got the MGW shifter. This shifter actually bolts to the transmission. So, you know, the factory shifter's kind of bolted to the body, and then you've got the transmission. So everything kind of gets misaligned when you're torquing up the powertrain, and then you try to hit a shift at high RPM. So this shifter here actually bolts onto the trans, which obviously kind of like the old-fashioned cars with the top loaders. It keeps everything aligned, and from what I understand, this should really make the shifts precise and eliminate a lot of the missing shifts at high RPM. Gosh, they give you some Dynamat to keep some noise out of the car. There's a heat shield. Of course, all the extra hardware and everything is in here. Yeah, so basically, you know, with the carbon synchros and all the good parts inside the transmission, plus a really good heavy-duty clutch, plus a really good heavy-duty shifter, hopefully this will be enough to fix the MT82 problems that I've been having, all the shifting issues, being locked out of gears, grinding going into gears, and all of that. You know, it's a chunk of change. You know, you're figuring a few $1,000s minimum to do this, but fortunately I have a extended warranty that's helping me out on it some, since there was actually some internal damage to the transmission, so they chipped in half of it. So anyway, good news is though, after I do all of this, and actually like I was just saying, the shop has the car, they're rebuilding the transmission right now, doing a good stage 2 build on it. So I'm gonna have them go ahead, that's where I was going with this, I'm gonna have them go ahead and install this MGW for me, because when the transmission is out of the car, it's way easier to do it. You can do it obviously up in the car, which is what most people do, but it's just so much easier if you're going to have the trans out anyway. Go ahead and put this on, the part that you need to do, you know, bolting it to the trans and all that. Way easier to do it with it out of the car. So anyway, can't wait to get the car back and try this out. It's going to feel completely different with all of these new parts. It's not going to be nearly as smooth, and I don't know what the word for it is, but you know, from the factory, they designed those purposefully to be really smooth and silky for the masses, you know, but the masses don't want to shift at 7,000 RPM when they're trying to defend themselves in a little bit of a race. So, you know, it's going to feel very different. I'm hoping that the Exedy clutch doesn't give it a really stiff pedal, because I don't want a much stiffer pedal than what it had. And this is going to feel a little notchier, probably will have a little bit more noise through the gear shift, but if it functions like it's supposed to function and I can actually shift the car properly, it's going to be way, way worth it. So can't wait to get this back, and then we'll take it for a ride and I'll show you. All right, so I just got the car back from the shop. I got the MGW shifter installed. They said it took 4 hours to do this, and I don't I don't think they're just making that up. I can see how it would take a while. When I opened the box on that thing and I saw all the parts that were in there, there is a lot to it, but they got the MGW installed. Stage 2 build on the transmission with carbon synchros and, you know, the shift pads, shift stops. And they also did a little work on the gears and new bearings and all of that good stuff. And we have the Exedy clutch installed, the Mach 500 Stage 1 clutch. Now, I just drove this car down the road a little bit, and here's the thing about the MGW shifter. First of all, the spring, the centering spring is really firm compared to the stock one. I mean, you can see it takes some force, and so that makes the thing, the whole assembly here feels completely different because of that spring. Now, obviously it's shorter, you know, the throw is shorter. You have 4 different options with the MGW. I went with the standard handle, but I guess if you want to look at it like this, from 1 to 4, with 1 being the very shortest, least amount of throw that you can get from them, and 4 being the closest to stock, I went with number 3, basically. And so the reduction, I think, is somewhere around 18%, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I will say, though, that because of that spring, like I said, it feels completely different. So you have to drive with this for a while to get used to it. I mean, if you've been driving the stock shifter for a long time, and then you put an MGW in one of these cars, it's going to take you some time to get used to it. You got to really pull over now to go down to second. You don't want to do anything as far as moving it back and forth to hit third, because that spring will put it right in the middle. So you just kind of push it forward for third. Fifth and sixth are about the same. Where I really have the trouble, and I had this same trouble on the Mach 1 car that I used to have, is 2 and 4, because with that centering spring being so firm, second gear and fourth gear feel pretty similar as far as where they're located. So when I first started driving that Mach 1, after I put the MGW in it, I found that I would accidentally hit second sometimes when I was trying to go to fourth, and that's not good. Sometimes I would hit fourth when I wanted to go to second, and I'm like, why is the car bogging down, you know? Same deal with this one. It just feels like second and fourth are closer together. You know, it's just the way that it feels. But anyway, bottom line is it drives a lot better. Let me put my seatbelt on here, and if the camera will stay in position, we'll drive it down the road here for a minute. So again, I mean, it's just really firm now. So you got to give it a little bit of muscle. But the clutch engagement is pretty good on this Exedy. The pedal is a little bit heavier. That's what a lot of guys want to know, is how does the pedal feel compared to stock, and it is a little heavier. You would expect that because the Exedy clutch is completely different than the stock clutch. It's got a lot more mass to it. It's just built with heavier gauge material. I mean, it's just a much heavier duty clutch. So you would expect that you're going to get a little bit more, you know, heaviness to the pedal, and it does, but it's not bad. It's not bad. It still feels better than the old-fashioned cable actuated clutches like I had in that Mach 1 car that I used to have. So it's still not bad. Now watch, when you go to third, you just kind of push it up with your palm, it goes right in. I mean, it's no problem at all now. And the thing about it is the second to third shift doesn't grind anymore. I mean, it's just really smooth. Now, I'm in the break-in period for the clutch, so I don't want to really rag on it hard. You know, I don't want to take it wide open throttle right now and all that. But we'll just kind of roll through some gears, go down the road here. The way I've got the camera mounted in the car, I apologize if it's shaking like a leaf. Did the best I could do. But we'll just go through a few gears here, and yeah, I mean, I tell you what, there's second, third, fourth. I mean, it's just, I tell you what, this Exedy clutch, I really like the clutch. It didn't take any time at all to relearn that clutch. It feels great. The engagement is awesome on it. It really is. It doesn't chatter at all. There's no funny noise coming up through here, you know, through the console with the shifter either. It's just a really nice setup. So after I get through the break-in period on the clutch here, I'm just gonna kind of I'm going to try and do it right because I've got a lot invested here, and so I'm going to do it right and be good and do the break-in. But once we get through that, we'll go wide open throttle a few times and see how that 2 to 3 shift goes. But yeah, I mean, so far I really like this setup. I think this is going to be, as the total package here with the trans build, the clutch, and the shifter, total package, this should be the cure for the MT82 issues. Yeah, I mean, it feels so good. Once I get used to the shifter, I think this is going to be nice. And as I pull into the McDonald's here, I'll tell you something else real quick too, is that the people that I've talked to who have done these MGW shifters, they say that over time, it's just like a lot of things, they kind of wear in a little bit, you know, and they soften up just a little bit as they kind of wear in. So they get better with time. So that's another thing to consider too. But yeah, I just drove it down the road, man. This thing is so nice. I can't keep going over the same thing over and over again, but I just don't know what else to say. It's just a really nice setup. I really like it, so I can't wait to get it out on the open road and see how it works out. All right, so like I said, I'm in the break-in period on this. I'm not gonna really be hard on it, but let's go out here on the road and just do like a 2 to 3 shift at like 4,500. That won't be too bad. Because that will pretty much tell the story. I mean, this thing had gotten into the position where even if you weren't trying to race the car, if you were just driving it in a spirited fashion, like I said, you're in second gear, you're running up about 4,500 RPM, and then you just try to shift to third, it would grind real bad going into third, even in those conditions. And the guy at the transmission shop showed me the gears, and he showed me the synchro hubs that they took out of it. I saw the original clutch disc that was in this car for 100,000 miles. He showed me all of that. And on the synchros, you could see where it had been grinding a little bit and things were just not meshing together the way that they were supposed to. You know, it was pretty obvious. So easy to see where the problem was, and hopefully it is completely cured now. So all right, let's see here. Second gear. Oh, look at that. Wow. So that was about 5,000 RPM in second gear, and I went to third and it was buttery smooth, no grinding whatsoever, no issues whatsoever. Just absolutely awesome. Now I'll tell you something else. The factory clutch, the pressure plate in the factory setup is junk. So sometimes when I would try to shift at wide open throttle, the other thing that would happen is the clutch pedal would get stuck to the floor, and I'd have to actually pump it or use my foot on the back side of it to pull it back up again, which is obviously a safety issue among other things. So this Exedy clutch being so heavy duty, that shouldn't be a problem anymore either. You know, I shouldn't have to worry about the clutch pedal getting stuck to the floor anymore. So all the issues with the factory setup should be gone now. And man, that 2 to 3 shift felt fantastic. I'm so happy with it. Driving the car down the road here in 6th gear at about 60 miles an hour, and there is absolutely zero noise coming up through this shifter. So the kit comes with the Dynamat sound deadening material and all that kind of stuff with it. The shop apparently, I mean, I haven't had the car up on a rack yet, but apparently they did install all of that correctly. I mean, I don't have any additional noise at all. There's no vibration, no oscillation, none of that tuning fork sound coming up through here. I mean, it sounds exactly like the factory setup inside the car. I've heard a lot of people complain after they put these MGW shifters in. They say it's real noisy and everything, and it gets on their nerves. I honestly don't hear any additional noise at all. And I don't feel any additional vibration in the handle either. So, I mean, so far, I'm just tickled to death with this. Very pleased with how this setup is working out. Can't say enough good things about it. So yeah, if you got one of these 2011, 2012, 13, 14 models especially, and you've got the MT82 and you've been having issues with it, that's my advice, is to save up your money and do it right the first time. Get the transmission rebuilt, put a new clutch in it, and do this MGW shifter all at the same time, and you will be very happy with the results. Yeah, it's kind of expensive to do it that way. Fortunately for me, I have an extended warranty that covered half of it. But if you take the time and the money and do it right like this, it'll be a one and done kind of thing. You won't have to worry about it ever again. So, super happy with it. Time to get back to the farm and we'll go over the final details. It's going to be kind of hard to pick up with the camera, but if you look real closely, you can kind of see where some of these engagement teeth are kind of chewed up pretty bad. Especially like, well, I can't really get the camera to cooperate, but basically they're just kind of eating up along the edges there. Not really good. So yeah, I've been driving the car around for a little while and I think it's going to be just fine now. Like I said, I got to get used to that MGW shifter. It is quite a bit different, a lot firmer, and the throw, you just got to get used to it. It's one of those things, you got to put some seat time in there and just get used to it. But once I get used to that, I'm going to really love it. I'm very happy how it all worked out. You know, you can potentially open a can of worms when you do this because there's so many things that you have to get right. But I guess, you know, maybe I'm fortunate, it all worked out great. I have zero chatter from the clutch, zero vibration or noise coming from the shifter. I mean, everything is just flawless. It works out great. The clutch is awesome. It shifts great. It's 100% cured now, thankfully. So now I can go out this summer and enjoy the car, you know, and if somebody on the other side of me is picking on me a little bit, I can defend myself now. So, all right, guys, you got one of these cars and you got any questions about it, let's say you're having some issues with your transmission, hopefully that'll help you out, but you can post comments below, obviously. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Weather's beautiful, so now let's go have some fun.